We used to do a declaration at school at Bethel, and we were all very poor students. So our favorite part in the declaration we gave there was we'd all yell, "Checks in the mail," and they would come. It was crazy. So I really believe in the power of declarations. All right, kids, we going? All right, awesome. All right, let's pray. God, help us. Amen. All right. I'm amped today. I feel really good, really energetic. I was praying this morning, just going over my thoughts on what I was going to preach on. And when Justin asked me on Tuesday, and I confirmed with him Wednesday, I started really thinking about it, and I got all these ideas. And then I started putting pen to paper, and it just wasn't clicking. It felt so forced. And so I just did what all wise people do. I started just surfing the internet. And then I just started reading some things, and all of a sudden I just felt fire, and I was like, oh, okay, God. All right, so we're going to talk about this stuff. So I kind of have some very loose themes today. One of them is everything is changing, and the other theme is we are the solution and the problem. But I'm going to talk about that in as positive, encouraging a way as I can. So first of all, I've been in the Sermon on the Mount all week, and it's just been so good. And it's always a good refresher. I encourage you, if you are just stale in your Bible readings or whatever, just go back to the Sermon on the Mount. It just recharges everything. The greatest sermon of all time, Jesus just, it sounds funny saying this, but Jesus knocked it out of the park like he won it, And it's just so good, and it's so simple. Everything is so simple. But one of the main themes of the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus is recalibrating the thinking of the religious Jews who've come out of thousands of years of tradition and law, and Jesus is like, yeah, you thought this meant this, but let me tell you what it really means. And I can't even imagine what it was like sitting wherever they were sitting, on a hill, on dirt, or standing, and just hearing all this, and their minds being like, what? But I guarantee you their hearts were coming to life as their minds were being broken. I feel like we're in a similar season here in a lot of ways, in the world, not just America. Justin and I were talking this week, and he called me, and we were talking about Ron Luce, who used to do Acquire the Fire. If anybody ever went to one of those, I went to 3 of them in the 90s. And it was awesome. And that was the first time I heard the theology of you're a world changer. And so Ron Luce, I just have a great respect and admiration for the man. And last year, I think it was last year, his ministry went bankrupt. And he's kind of recalibrating and thinking about what to do next. And so he's looking ahead. And one of the things he was talking about is just the spread of information right now in technology. It's basically wiping out illiteracy in the world. And we have a chance as Christians, if we're at the forefront of this, and this is what he believes he's shifting into, if we're at the forefront of this, it can be Bible teachings, stuff about Jesus, the good news, that can be the first thing that is educating all these nations. And it's very exciting. And so I might be all over the place today, but that's okay. It's all going to come together. But I wanted to break this sermon down into 3 sections, and the first section is going to be what's already happened. In other words, just a brief glimpse, kind of what's behind us. And then I want to talk about what's here, and then what's coming. One of the reasons I was getting so excited about this is because I love to look at all the information going on in the world. We can get so narrow-minded into just what's going on in our family, our neighborhood, our community, larger community, our state, our nation, and we can just look at all that and be like, oh, everything's bad. You had a bad week at home, your wife or husband been fighting a lot, your kids are, messing up, whatever it is, and you can just be like, oh, the world's going to hell in a basket. Oh, I'm crushed. And you're just riding your emotional wave. And Jesus in the Bible and not just Jesus, often in the Bible, it's very clear, to read the signs of the times, to look at what's going on. Now, if we branch out and actually look at the broader world, there's a whole lot of crazy good happening. Whole lot of crazy good. For one thing, what's happened is that in 1981, even sooner, the world poverty rate was 42%. Today, it's 9.1%. I believe emerging markets in Asia and Africa, Middle East, all that, extreme global poverty is on trend to be completely eradicated within the next 10 to 20 years. That's a sign of the time. Another sign of the time, I just mentioned this a little bit, but illiteracy should be eradicated within 10 to 20 years. That doesn't mean like a few pockets here and there, but by eradicated, I mean it should be less than 1% worldwide. Information is it's pushing out corruption. So many things are being exposed. It's pushing out corruption in news, politics, even in our food, science. All this information is coming up, and it's the people now. If you choose to be, like, basically you don't have an excuse not to be educated anymore. If there's anything you're like, well, I'm behind on that, I just wasn't taught that, Google. One word. Okay? And sometimes on Google you got to weed through the mess, so you can use Bing, which 2% of Americans do. But you can find what you need to do to be educated. And it's estimated right now that the average third grader possesses more knowledge than Benjamin Franklin did at his height. This is the world we live in. What's already happened? We are at a more pivotal point than many realize. Anybody ever go to the Barna Group and read their studies? It's fascinating, Justin. Pastors. The Barna Group studies trends pertaining to Christianity exclusively. And they are very well versed, very educated, amazing research. And one of the things I wanted to share with you all is that the Barna Group did a study and discovered that if just the American church, if we all gave 10%, there would be a surplus right now of another $165 billion in the church. That's on top of what's already in the church. $165 billion, which would be enough to fulfill the Great Commission, fund every missionary to every other country with still $100 billion left over. It would be enough, and this is just a year, $165 billion a year. It would be enough to solve poverty. It would be enough to solve hunger and illiteracy, and still have some left over. And all that could be done within 5 years with just our resources in the church in America. This is the crazy stuff. You know, we read the Bible, we read Isaiah, and it says, like, the wealth of the nations will come in. Guys, it's here. We just haven't been stewarding it right. We've let a poverty mentality come over. And when I say we, please understand, I mean myself and the church generally. If you don't have that problem, awesome. You've found freedom in that. That's amazing. So I mean a general we. I'm not pointing fingers. I just mean the general church in the West. I believe right now, since we already have what we need, we have the technology, we have the talent, we have the resources. We already have what we need. I really believe that we're shifting, and it's begun, is the great spiritual battle of our time. I'm not saying it's the end of the world, great spiritual battle, the last great spiritual battle. I'm not saying any of that. But I do mean of the last few generations. I truly believe that. Now, here's the good news. It's already been going, and guess what? We're all still sitting here, had our lattes this morning. Like, God fights battles so differently than we expect. We expect doom and gloom, and he's like, I'll take care of things if you let me. And for the most part, you guys will be comfortable except for when I call you in here and there to do stuff. God is amazing at fighting battles. And that's a biblical example. If you go back to the Jews in the Old Testament, how many battles did they fight? And they got all amped up. And God's like, yeah, go get that city. Walk around it and shout. That's pretty amazing. Or Gideon. Go, like, raise up torches and break some glass. And 300 men disseminated 150,000. God fights battles so easily if we let him fight it his way. But what that requires is a mind shift. Right now, I believe we are shifting into a season, and I think come 2020, we're going to see such an acceleration of things that if we're not willing to leave behind the old wineskins, we're going to be overwhelmed. I really, truly believe we're about to enter a 10 to 20-year period where everything's going to look different. I don't just mean America, I mean the world. Imagine economists are predicting that, there's some people saying, a recession's coming. Look, if a recession comes, it's going to be a blip because Asia and Africa are just about to enter the world markets. There's going to be such an increase of opportunity in the world, it's going to be unheard of. These are the things that are coming. Are we going to be ready to lead culture? Because guess what's happening? Everything is getting easier when it comes to opportunity, resources, and labor. Most physical labor jobs are going to be gone in the next 15, 20 years. Replaced by AI, replaced by robots. All the landscapers cheer. It's true, though. And we can sit there and be scared and say robots are taking over our economy, or we can say, hallelujah, I don't have to work my butt off for this hard thing anymore, and I can actually focus on something that matters to me or impacting lives. It's actually a delightful, wonderful thing if physical labor jobs become automated. I know construction workers, wonderful people, who their bodies are destroyed by the time they're 50. That's not God's plan. Things are shifting. But what's going to happen when all this availability happens? We can't stop the spread of technology. It's not going to happen. So how can we meet the problems that it creates? Here's the problems that technology creates. It creates relationship problems. It becomes easier and easier to become isolated. It becomes easier and easier to turn on a screen instead of call up a friend. Who can lead that? Who are supposed to be the relational experts in the world? The church. God is opening up the time when we literally have the best opportunity to shape the world, to shape culture. Because people are going to be looking for answers. They're going to say, what's the answer to anxiety? What's the answer to loneliness? What's the answer to alcoholism? Jesus. But guess what? Jesus is in all you and in me. So I'm the answer. You're the answer. Not that they don't need Jesus. They do. They need him to come in you. But they're going to be looking to you. Be looking to you. Let your light shine. And here's the crazy part. Most of us are going to be able to impact the most people just by living our lives fully, the way it's meant to be done. People come to my wife and I, we don't have a perfect marriage, but we have a great marriage. And people come to us often and have been like, hey, what do you guys do? You guys look so happy. I'm like, well, you should have seen us last night when World War III happened. But we made it work. And guess what? Just a little bit of Jesus in our marriage. And they see it because they don't have any Jesus. What is it with those of you who've been married 20, 30 years? That's the people Summer and I look to. And that's the people that even more people should be looking to and saying, how do you do it? Why is my marriage a train wreck? And yet you look so happy. What about business? Christian business owners. You know what's really sad right now? I've heard multiple people say that when they see a Jesus fish on a business card, they're like, automatically, forget it. And it's not because of Jesus, it's because too many people have used that and then abused it. Too many people have. So what if your name alone carried weight on your card? What if you just lived so much like Jesus that when you handed somebody a business card, your reputation preceded you? People say, I can't wait to do business with this person. They're honorable, they pay their bills on time, they don't overcharge me, whatever it is. That is a little bit of Jesus. It says, Peter says, live with so much hope that others ask you about the hope inside you. We don't have to go to a street corner for evangelism. Some people are called to do that, and God bless them, it's not me. Some people are called to do that, but most of us, our evangelism is going to be living our best version of our lives and then being prepared with an answer when people come to us. Bob Johnson is Bill Johnson's brother, and he's an evangelist in San Francisco. And San Francisco, obviously, is a pretty hostile place to Christianity for the most part. And so he's like, look, I can't stand on a street corner there. I'll be stoned, or somebody will pick up one of the needles on the ground and stab me. You know, that was a homelessness joke for anybody who picked it up. San Francisco is rough right now, guys. But he says, so what he does is a lot of the time he's just in the supermarkets, and he just tries to bump into people as much as possible. And he's like, oh, Jesus just touched you. You know, he doesn't say that, but he's thinking it. Jesus just touched you. And more often than not, it creates conversation. Hey, what was that? And he says people are actually never mad at him, which is funny. But it's not too funny if you realize, like, back in the past, great revivalists like Smith Wigglesworth would literally punch people and they wouldn't feel it, but the sickness would come out. There's something about when, like, the Spirit leads you to do a knock, and that's not encouraging you all to go punch somebody. Trust me. Most of the time, it's not the Spirit. All right? Especially because the people you want to punch, it's not out of love. But he does that, and it creates conversations, and then he gets to talk to them and love on them, and that's how he brings people to Jesus. And he's literally brought thousands of people to Jesus just doing these little things. You know, that's thinking outside the box. That's what we have to do as Christians. So how are we going to step into the modern economy, the modern lifestyle, modern technology? How are we going to do that? Like, it's time to stop bemoaning the fact that it's not the 1950s. I can't tell you how many times I see, it's mostly in literature, like online news and stuff, but how many times I see Christians writing in Christian magazines or conservative writing and political stuff, and just bemoaning the fact that, like, back 50 years ago it was so great, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, there's a reason God shook that up. It wasn't that the devil just won this thing. Devil can't win anything unless God allows him to do something, right? So why would we shake up this seemingly glorious time out of World War II and everything? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because all that stuff that looks so great from a church perspective was just because religion was dominating. It wasn't true Christianity. There was still a whole lot of people beating their wives. Minorities were crazily oppressed. And just because prayer was allowed in schools doesn't mean things were better. But you know what religion does? Religion allows a lot of things to remain hidden. And so I believe that the last 50 years or so has been the great shaking of religion in America. Because God doesn't want religious Christianity. He hates it, in fact. Because religious Christianity is actually a terrible, basically, like in modern terms, a meme of what Christianity should be. It's not real. And religious Christianity, what's it look like? It looks like somebody who follows all the rules and has no love in their heart. It looks like somebody who you might see stuck up on a stage who can say all these great victories in their lives and stuff, and just, oh, there's no knock on them. They look so perfect, and yet they're belittling others. You know, with their words, with their teaching. Their religion is an ugly, ugly, ugly thing because it allows you to think you're further than you are. It allows the world to think, oh, it looks like that and it's inaccessible because I'm imperfect. Religion closes the doors on the world. Jesus embraces the world. We, building this church, like as the year and a half I got to be a part of it with Justin, I know that Justin's vision for this church is, one of the reasons it's not a denominational church, we don't have a denominational affiliation, is because we don't want any religion attached to this church. This is a place where believers and unbelievers can come and experience Jesus and find a family. That's a vision of this church, and it's why Summer and I are here and found a home here, for the time we've been in Kerrville. And it's amazing, and I believe this is close, like, it's not perfect. Cross Kingdom's not perfect, But I believe that vision is closer to perfection than many other visions. Not that I'm putting down anybody, because guess what? I've heard of Methodist church where revival is breaking out. There's Episcopalian churches where revival has overrun it. In South Africa, I'm sorry, not South Africa. In Africa, the Anglican church is actually the leader of revival right now for the most part. And it's on fire. It is on fire, Christianity. But if you went to an Anglican church, most of them in America or the UK, you'd find a dead religion. And it's very sad. But it doesn't mean, it's not a knock on what they meant to be. It's what that umbrella enables you to become if you choose to go that way. It actually gives you a basis for religion. Just like when God gave the Jews the law, he never meant for them to make a religion out of it. But they did. Because man likes to create rules and institutions. Jesus, which goes so against our thinking, he just smashed all the walls down and is like, look, here's freedom. And we're like, let's just put that wall up a little bit more. You know, freedom's scary. Because freedom means responsibility. Well, the whole world, the gates are about to be thrown down because the gates of poverty are falling. The gates of technological access are falling. And there's only one place in the world that has the answers of how to live in freedom well. And it's us. It's the Bible. It's relationship with Jesus. He's the one who's got all the answers. So if we're trying to hold on to the past, God's saying, I can't do that. There's things that might have looked good, but there is rot underneath. I had to break it down. So the church now, we have a choice. Are we going to be the leaders of the next wave? Are we going to take church outside the walls? Jesus' final command is love one another as I have loved you. Final command. What would the world look like if every Christian started there as our basis? If we didn't look at every little thing everybody was doing wrong. For example, this week I read a story about John Crist. Who knows who John Crist is, the Christian comedian? He's fallen pretty hard. This week, a bunch of sexual allegations came out against him, and he admitted to them. He's put his tour on hold, and it's all, like, basically his career is over for the moment. Doesn't mean God can't bring him back up when it's time in a few years or whatever. But right now, and this is crazy, when I was reading about it, I didn't realize how successful he is. He's a funny guy, you know. He does a lot of churchy jokes, kind of like pokes fun at like how we do things in church, and it was mostly good-natured. So I enjoyed a lot of his stuff, but this Christian guy, he was on the top 100 tours in the world. Can you believe that? I didn't know that. His touring, which means in the tour circuit, he was a top 100 celebrity in the whole world. Now, imagine what the world sees when they see him fall like this. Oh, another Christian hypocrite. You know, I guarantee you he's getting it, and he's in probably the worst place of his life. And so the church, we can look at him and say, man, why'd you do that? Like, put another stain on us. Well, first of all, Jesus can't be stained, okay? He can't be stained. And so what if the church, instead of just belittling him and already kicking him while he's down, what if we said, you know what, he messed up, but John, we love you. Come back in. Let us love on you. Let us rehabilitate you. Let's send you out. You know what the world would say when they saw that? They'd say, whoa, I want to be a part of that family. Because the world right now is a part of a family where if they mess up, we beat them till they're down. You destroy them. You crush them. There's a reason why in politics or entertainment, a lot of times once an actor, actress, politician has a major failing, you don't hear from them again. And it's because, like, the enemy knows his people, like, he has to keep that facade up to promote his people, and they're not his people, do you understand what I mean? But they might be working for him and not know it. But here, the deal is, like, if we were the people who rehabilitated our own and accepted mistakes and are wise about it, like, it takes time to rehabilitate somebody when it's a major fall. But then we start giving them opportunity again. Guess what? This is what Jesus does for you. Whether you know it or not, whether you've recognized it or not, we all made a whole lot of mistakes. And, I grew up around a lot of people, not my parents, but a lot of people in the church who, if somebody got divorced, they pretty much could never minister again. It was like a black stain forever. Instead of the scarlet letter A, it was the scarlet letter D, divorce. But what about when you actually, and I'm not talking about divorce for biblical reasons. Let's say it was a divorce because two people just decided, like, I don't like you anymore, And they didn't fight for it, they didn't work it out, and then this, say like, for an example, just the guy ran off with a woman 15 years younger or something, and that preceded the divorce. Do we automatically, even when 10 years later the guy comes back and is like, dude, I totally ruined everything, and is penitent, do we allow them to walk back in their calling again? Or do we just say, well, you know what, 15 years ago, dude, sorry, you ruined your life, not my fault, But that's kind of what we've done. And it's really sad, because Jesus is working with broken people all the time. So we shouldn't be surprised when we're working with one. Every single one of us came into the kingdom broken, battered, bruised, and really ugly, covered in sin. Jesus took every single one of us, stood us on our feet, said, you came to me, I now call you perfect. Yeah, you're going to have to walk out what that means, but I'm sending you back out. The disciples were not perfect guys. Matthew was a tax collector, which means that, we all make jokes about the IRS here. Imagine the IRS on, like, steroids coming to your door and asking you for your last dollar, even though you've already paid them 100% of your income. That's what tax collectors were like back then. They could just, anything was a tax, and they could determine how much you paid, everything. That they had leeway. And yeah, the Roman Empire had laws and stuff, but they just let them run amok. And people hated tax collectors. Jesus goes to a tax collector in a booth before he'd repented, before he knew what kingdom living was, and says, hey, follow me. And he got up and followed him. I don't see Jesus doing a check mark of, do you meet these criteria a lot? Instead, he took them in their brokenness and said, I'm going to build you. All you have to do, though, is say yes. There's a lot of people out there who would say yes if we gave them the opportunity. But we've judged them. And so in what's coming, which I truly believe, there's not even I believe this so much, I don't have a doubt about it. And so if I'm proven wrong, I'm going to be really surprised. Like, I've been just, in all my research and all my time with the Lord and all just my life, the trends I've seen, I really believe we're about to enter the best season that the world has ever seen. I really do. And I really believe that the church is going to lead it if we say yes. Kanye West last week, at a service, he wasn't the pastor, which shows that Kanye has some wisdom, because he's not ready to pastor anybody. But at a service, creating the opportunity for this service, 2,000 people got saved. Just because Kanye said yes. Kanye said yes, and now he's creating opportunity for others. And there's no religion on Kanye. No religion. And we can be skeptical and say, like, well, maybe they just got caught up in emotionalism, and maybe it's like, so what? What if only 100 of those 2,000 really shaped their hearts? Should we not still celebrate that? Jesus throws a party for every single one. That's a lot of partying in heaven. It's estimated right now globally 250,000 people come to Christ daily. Daily. Right now, the body of Christ in the world is 30% of the world population. That's coming just 2,000 years after 12 men said yes in a population of about 150 million. 12 men said yes once upon a time, and 2,000 years later, 1/3 of the world has said yes. How much more? We know that there will be people who say no, but we don't get to choose who those people are. They get to choose. We should be treating everybody as if they're a pre-Christian. Haven't met Jesus yet? Oh, you will. I guarantee you that's how Kanye feels. I've heard him talk, man. He is on fire. That's awesome, and there's going to come a point where Kanye goes through some lows and there's a backlash, and that's fine. We all go through it. But right now he's riding high, and a lot of good's coming of it. And we should be excited for him. We're excited what God's doing. Okay? President Trump, same kind of thing. Raw as all get out. And when you're older, it takes a little longer to shift around. He's got a lot of habits to overcome. But there's not a doubt in me that he loves the Lord. Not a doubt in me. And we're seeing these very raw people become the leaders right now, at least in the levels of influence. Church, what if we were a little more raw? What if we were a little more open about, I'm not perfect and I'm not calling you to be, but let's run after perfection together. Let's see how we can get there. It's interesting, the last 5 years or so, when I was really religious, you could have looked at me and analyzed every part of my life and been like, oh yeah, he's doing really good for a 28-year-old, 9-year-old. And then, as time went on, I got to know Jesus more, my heart came more alive and stuff, and now, a religious person would analyze my life and be like, I don't know. Look at that movie you just watched. Look at that show he likes. He's not listening to K-Love. It's sad but true, and you're laughing because you all know it a little bit. But I'm so much freer now. And I have so much more love for people. I used to just sit on Facebook and just kind of wait. Who can I get at? Who's wrong today? I'm going to do the Lord's work. For real. It was ugly. And guess what? I didn't have many people coming to me being like, hey, how do you do it? How are you the way you are? It was more like, well, if your church is like you, I'm out. Well, God didn't want you anyways. You didn't have what it took. But I'll pray for you, brother. I had to throw that in there because that's love. But it's so true, right? Religion is so ugly. And it hides itself behind the verses in the, we hide ourselves behind verses in the Bible. And they're verses completely taken out of context or without the understanding that, you would need this whole book to understand each verse. You really do. Don't skip around. Skip around once you already got it a little bit. But don't skip around if you don't and just look for what you want to be your answer. You can find pretty much anything you want in there if you look at it through the right lens. I knew a guy who debated me once that abortion wasn't wrong because the word abortion is not in the Bible. Dummy. This whole thing's about life. I'm serious. You can proof text pretty much anything you want out of the Bible. And so we have to understand it through its own lens. The Bible teaches us how to understand the Bible. And then you also got to throw in relationship with God. If you don't have relationship, you don't have the Holy Spirit opening up to you the mysteries of the Bible, I don't want to learn from you. Because if you don't have relationship, all you're teaching are words. Paul said that he would walk into a place, he says, I come with words and with power. There's no power on the words if it's religion. There's no power in the words if everybody going is just hearing Latin and you don't understand it, which is how the church did church for 500 years in the West. Imagine going, it used to be the Bible was not available to you in your language, so you'd go to a priest, and at some point in your life, And the priest would pick a verse out of the Bible for you. Be like, here's your Bible verse for your life. And I will actually give it to you in your language. Thank you. And this is and you would just hold on to that. And you'd be like, oh, I know part of the Bible. And then you go to church every week and it was in Latin. And the people just stood there. You know, imagine what that'd be like now. Everybody'd be like, whatever, translator, you know. Like, we can get around it now. There's no barrier anymore. There used to be major barriers, and that's what religion does. It creates a barrier. So, I'm already down to my last 5 minutes. I'm actually going to finish on time for once. That's when I prayed God help us. He said, okay. So the last thing, I'm just going to finish on this then. I threw out a few facts today, told a few stories, probably just didn't do anything but make you guys laugh. But here's the point. Amazing things are coming. Amazing things are already happening. Already happening. And if we go forward without fear, and we go forward without religious walls and mindsets, we will influence culture. And here's what we're getting to. 2 Peter 3:12 talks about we, the church, determine the coming of the Lord. A lot of people have put it into like once every person has been ministered to, Jesus will come. And so there's been like these mandates to go out to heaven. There's nothing wrong with that mandate. It's the Great Commission. I love it. Go. Like, let's spread it to everybody. But that's actually not biblical. And the biblical thing is when the church is ready, Jesus comes. Well, church, if we're not leading culture, we're not ready. It doesn't mean we won't be leading every single bit. There's going to be pockets of darkness. That's obvious. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't need to come back. But our major opportunity to take a huge leap forward is at the precipice right now. And we all have to make decisions. We all have to say, what am I willing to do for the Lord? What if God's calling you to be on television? What if God's calling you to go run a company? And what if God's calling you to leave Kerrville? What if God's calling you to stay in Kerrville? Like, serious, like, what is God calling you to do? Because if he's shifting you that way and you keep saying, no, I just want to stay comfortable. God, I'm going to stay here because my family's here. You are putting a big old ceiling on yourself. And God's asking all of us right now, will you leave it all behind? Would you leave everything behind? Not your spouse or kids, okay? Like, God, it's pretty clear. I don't have time to go into it. But that's not biblical. All right? What God has brought together as one, man should not put us under, okay? God hates divorce. Your calling, if your calling's so amazing, it's going to be with your spouse alongside you, okay? Otherwise, hell breaks out. All right? And literally in your life, it will break out. So don't do that. But everything else, family, job, area, whatever, you might be called to leave it. If you're not, awesome. How can you steward what he's given you in that moment, in that place? How can you be the influencer? What if your influence is just the 3 to 5 year olds right now? Awesome. One day those are going to be the world changers. God's going to honor you for honoring them someday. You have to figure this out and work it out and say yes. And everybody who says yes, if most of the church says yes, we're going to be amazed at how many other people are flooding in. Already it's happening. But it's not happening in religious communities. It's happening where the gospel is being preached raw and lives are being changed raw. People are being loved on in their raw state. That's where revival is breaking out. Right now, the gospel is absolutely on fire in China, Africa, and South America. The poorest places of the world are going to be leading the church cultural revolution if we don't step up too. God blessed America for a reason. We get to be leaders in this if we say yes. But if we say no, God will find somebody else. Because he's not going to lose this battle. Revelation 19:7 says, the bride has made herself ready. That's when Jesus came. The bride made herself ready. The bride is going to make herself ready. Who's going to lead it? Are we going to be the first fruits America, that got blessed the most, that got to rise to influence, change the world, and then we say, no, we're good. We're ready to just be comfortable. And then we let the hungry ones rise up and lead. Or are we going to lead? And are we going to be pulling them up instead of having missionaries from there come here, which is already happening, by the way. Africa, just a couple years ago, had more missionaries sent to America than vice versa. Will we lead? If we're not, it's because we're not saying yes. So I encourage you, I'm out of time, I didn't make it, dang it, but I'm going to finish quick. I encourage you all, what are you not saying yes to? Work it out with him. I guarantee you, most of you, right, already have been feeling a stirring lately. Some of you might have already identified what it is. Some of you might be like, I don't know why, but I feel stir crazy. I feel anxious. Is that speaking to anybody? Okay, 3 of you? All right. I said most, I was wrong. How many of you in the last year have kind of been forced out of a position or a place you were at? Not by your own choosing. Job, business, location. A lot of you, right? That's going to happen even more. And because sometimes God's going to say, well, I'm doing it whether you like it or not. Because he's God and we're not. And that's awesome. And you know why he does that? Because there was some point when you were on fire and you said, God, I'll give you anything. And then so even fast forward 20 years when you're like, God, I won't give you this. He's like, no, you already gave me that. See, you wrote the contract. You're giving it to me. He's done that to me a lot. So I really pray boldly when I'm all fired up. And then then there's times like, I wasn't ready. He's like, I was. Okay. So it's going to happen to some of you whether you like it or not. But I just want to encourage all of you, don't put a ceiling on yourself. Start looking at the trends in the world, the technology trend, the poverty trend, whatever it is, all these trends going on, and say, how do we become influencers in that? Start asking God, how do I do that? How do I become that and not the person who just is like, well, flip phone forever, baby. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, because some of you, like, it does make sense, but my point is, it's like if you stick on something with a refusal to grow. That's my point. So if you're a flip phone user, but you got everything else into it, awesome, and it works for you, cool. But are you also like, all I ever want to do is just remember the old days. All I ever want to do is talk about the old days. I don't want to get involved with this. I don't like how this church now raises their hands when they sing. You know, like, how can you be a part of the times? Even if you're not personally, like, going to do it, how do you still be something in that? Because guess what? You still have something to give. Rich is amazing man. Like, I can't even imagine what you've seen in your life as things have changed. And Rich is up here up front most weeks, worshiping, when he could easily be like, 40 years ago, that's the way we should have done it. And we should still be doing that. But no, he's come in and he's supporting Justin. And Rich has done amazing things. He's known amazing people. He's led churches, everything. And yet he's chosen to be a part of this. This is where God has him, and he does it willingly, and he finds where he can be used here. And he doesn't do it in a way that's trying to just change everything, go back. We need leaders. Like the older generation, we need your wisdom. We need your wisdom. We need your stability, your steadfastness. We need that. Because the young people, we got the energy. But because of that, sometimes we do some really dumb things. Myself included. And we will do those dumb things if we don't honor you guys. But we'll also do them if you guys don't see us and see where the world's changing and help us steward it well. We're all meant to be in this together. Revival isn't just with the young. Revival is across generations. And there's a lot of people who say, revival will start with the young. Well, the passion starts with the young. But when an older person comes to Jesus, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, because they take all that world experience, and all of a sudden they got God's eyes on it. And it's amazing. So, anyways, would everybody stand? I just want to pray an impartation real quick, and then we're going to go home.
Thank you for listening. For more messages and other resources, please subscribe to this podcast or go to our website at www.crosskingdom.org.